Well, you use the word perception, right? And I think so much of the way our society thinks is how you're perceived and what your value is based on your salary. I think when you talk to the women of the WNBA, none of them will say that they think they should make exactly the same as LeBron James. They're more business savvy than that. But what they do fight for is, the ability to be valued for what kind of entertainment they're giving to our society and what they stand for in our society. And I think the women in our league are much more than just athletes. They have always stood for social justice issues. They've been role models. They're cultural icons. If you look at the NCAA, NIL college following, it's all female athletes because they understand brand. And so I think just the day that they get paid, their value, the perception will change amongst society, because there's still a lot of people in our society that think that what these women are doing on the basketball floor isn't exceptional, and it absolutely is. And we've had a lot of women go before us, like Billie Jean King, that have paved the way for equitable pay. And so it's kind of, I think, special for us to be in this moment as front office executives in the WNBA at a time where we're fighting for a lot of the same things. And we've seen women before us fight the same fight and have the success. And I think that's something that I'll always feel like I can be part of my legacy when that happens.
Yeah, and I think the part, especially around kind of paving the way, I think it also provides a lot of access and more opportunity. And I think that's kind of alongside, the pay equity and it increasing, right? It's not there, kind of to your point, but I think that's what I've seen is the more that there's kind of this attention, people are getting their worth, it provides more opportunities for the next generation that's coming up, which I think helps continue that process, right? And hopefully it speeds up, right? That we get there a little bit sooner, but I think to see what, especially even, some of what the college kids are getting in NIL, it's mind-blowing compared to when some of us were in college and what the opportunities were even where we couldn't even fathom that was a possibility. So I think the more that we get closer to it being equitable, that the access and the opportunities will keep going too.
I think though that the pay equity, especially with the WNBA, talking about solving that problem overnight is putting the cart before the horse, because I think that money's got to come from somewhere, right? And that's got to come from outside companies, partnerships, the whole thing. But really where it needs to come from is the media's coverage of women's sports. And, Wasserman did a study in 2023, and only 15% of live sports are female sports. I mean, there's your problem, right? So people don't know what they don't know. And I think when Caitlin Clark really came front and center, I don't think people knew that the WNBA players were making what they were making. Yeah. I think they just assumed that these women were making millions of dollars because in society's minds, right, the gender gap does not exist as far as pay. So I would definitely say the media has to give more coverage, but then you get in the weeds a little bit more as well, because it's complicating. I regularly follow female sports, and, it's also, I hate to say, it's also a racial problem. Yeah. Because we're talking about Caitlin Clark, fantastic athlete, Paige, fantastic athlete, but there's other fantastic athletes that are just as talented, if not very close, that we don't hear about. It's like the media chooses who is society going to be receptive to. Mm-hmm. Look at Boston. It's a perfect example, right? She's the player of the year in 2022. They ended up winning it all. And at the end of the day, what happens? They take the woman from Miami who was not as, in my opinion, not as good as Boston, and she had the nil deal of a lifetime, and Aaliyah didn't even fall in the top 10. Yeah. So I think it's a much stronger and bigger issue, where it's how the media's portraying all of the athletes. And really, instead of having female athletes it's like they want them to step out of their comfort zone. Like men, when they're professional athletes on Sports Illustrated, they're masculine and they're doing the sport, but then they want women being more feminine. And it's like, I think it's a big, how do I want to say? I think it's a big problem all around. But to get the money, there needs to be more awareness. The media needs to do their job. And I just feel like they're not. Yeah. And they're not helping you guys.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, there was one basketball game on per year. It was like, other than the final four and the championship game, there was like one game on TV, and I would clamor to watch it. And so it's amazing how hard we've had to push to have access to our game. And then once we've pushed that hard, look at what's happened. Look at the TV deal the WNBA and Kathy Engelbert was able to get, because all of a sudden the access to our game grew in the last few years. But I agree with you to the extent that there's also this perception of what a female athlete should look like and how they should behave or how they should dress. And I think that's what we love about being the position that we're in, is because our women don't care.
Yeah.
They will wear what they want to wear. They will be who they want to be. They'll say what they want to say. And we do need more people in the media to embrace that and tell their stories. And I think that's why it's important for us as an organization to have partnerships where we're allowed to tell stories of our players and the stories of our leadership. Because again, that's how we get that message out there, that this is who we are, where some of us are older, some of us are younger, some of us are black, some of us are white, some of us are straight, some of us are gay, but we're all in this fight together, and all of our stories are worthy to be paid attention to. And we take that seriously at the Connecticut Sun, that we can embrace the person that we are representing and who they are. And I think if we can continue to push the media to do the same thing, that gap between maybe who's the most attractive or who the public thinks is the most marketable, that can change.
Yeah, the Sun has always been true to themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have a reputation for that, which is great, which is a big attractive feature for us when it came to a partnership. I go back to, though, they deserve to be paid. Period. And how do we get there? The media is responsible. These big partnerships from these huge national companies, how LeBron gets paid, right? Exactly. They're not investing right now, or investing enough, because the prices are so low, because the media is not giving them national coverage all the time. So the media has gotten better, sure, fine. But that number 15 to 85 is ridiculous. 60-40 maybe, okay, fine. And there's a way to to get there, but as great players come out and people speak out, and teams like yours continue to play well, but also continue to be true to themselves, I think that's only going to attract society, and it's going to lead us in a direction where now we can start having conversations. Okay, Commissioner, these women deserve to be paid more. What are we doing for them?
I'll start more of like the societal expectations. I think that's something when you're growing up and you kind of look at your role models, right? And you look at kind of how they present themselves and how they carry themselves, and you don't really think about how they're perceived outside of kind of your mind. I think we have perceptions of what someone does, or, oh, they're a boss, or they're running an organization a certain way. And I think as you start getting a little bit older and you get into those roles, I think that's something that you do wonder about as you get a little bit more aware to perception. Like, okay, if they're younger, if they're a woman of color, or if they're maybe bigger than the average size, how they're looked at or how they're perceived by others as well. So I think some of it, being in the right environment, plays a big key to be able to be accepted for who you are. But I think you also have to get to a point where you're okay being yourself, and you understand that your differences or what maybe makes you stand out is something that is beneficial. And so you might feel a little isolated or on an island, but to know that you're maybe paving the way for the next person, or making it a better opportunity for them as you find your way forward.
Yeah, I think my favorite statistic is that I think it's over 90% of C-suite executives played a sport when they were younger. And I think that's what makes our work in the community and with youth development so impactful. Is it doesn't matter if you're 5 and you're playing rec ball, or you're a varsity athlete trying to play Division I basketball. Just being involved in sports gives you such a toolbox and such a skill set to be able to translate that to business. And I think that's where our messaging is really important as women, is like, this is why it's important to be an athlete, not because it will, give you money or give you a sponsorship, but because it'll give you the tools to be successful. And I think as leaders, we have to continue to push the envelope to what DE&I looks like, and what diversity in the workplace looks like. And you alluded to that it's not just the color of the skin, but it could be your experience, it could be your background, it could be your body size, that that everybody that works for you as a leader feels like they can come in and be their authentic selves. And that's not the case in so many places. And so we need the opportunity to celebrate that. We need to be able to talk about it over and over again so that women in society know that there are workplaces that celebrate diversity and allow you to be who you want to be when you come to work, as long as you do your job really, really well. And I know we have a long way to go, but I think we control what we can, and that's creating that, in our own workplaces.
I was an athlete growing up, and I think back all the time.
Everything at the golf tournament last year. So
Except the putting contest. You remember that guy?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was.
Sorry, you can come back this year and try to win that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to win it, but that was tough. But that guy just took it from all of us, and you would have never guessed it would have been him of all. But I will tell you, I was an athlete growing up, and I regularly talked to my young associates about the things I learned. Discipline is the number one thing you can learn. And I think a lot of women that were not athletes suffer from imposter syndrome, right? We are forced when we're athletes and we're young, reality stinks sometimes. I played softball, 3-2 count. You can win the game and you don't swing at the pitch. And you lose. And it all came down to you. That changes you in a lot of ways. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you that there are, ramifications for actions. It teaches you things that you don't even know you're learning at the time. It teaches you about life and about success. But when you're at that 3-2 pitch and you get the hit, you feel what it feels like to have won it all with your team. Being an athlete has brought for me such a different approach to leading. And we had 74% growth last year, so I'm doing something right. Yeah. But I contribute all of it to being an athlete. But I think a lot of women do suffer from imposter syndrome in the workplace, a lack of confidence. And I think the one thing I can say that we regularly see is that women don't help other women. Yeah. And, we can blame it on whatever it is, but how many times you've seen different generations women saying, hey, look, I had to go through it, so did you. No, they don't, right? So I had a really rough time. My story is beyond, I should not be sitting in this chair, but I am. And I'm sitting here because I wanted to do better than what was done for me, and I want to shape and change the youth. You had said you guys get involved with youth sports. That's amazing. Yeah. Because the little girl that was sitting on the sideline saying, hey, I get picked last every time. Do I do it? Do I do it? Now they can see it in a different light. Well, what can I learn from it? Yeah. And I just think it's so important that we're not just focused on our Caitlin Clarks and our Angel Reeses and our Paige, that we're really, really focused on who they were before they were that. Yeah. Who were they in 2010, 2011, 2012? And I know the Sun does a really great job of doing that, which I think is really great for you guys.
Yeah, you talked about the qualities, and I think resiliency is something we all learn through sport, right? And we shouldn't have to use it to fight for a place in our workplace with other women. Like, there's room for all of us at the top, right? And that's what we have to keep messaging, is there's room for all of us to have a seat at the table, and we need to have more seats at the table. Instead of the one seat for the one woman, let's make sure that half or more of the table is women. But I also think, the hard thing sometimes about being a competitor and being an athlete is that you bring that hardness sometimes and that mentality. And that, I think, has been a challenge for women in the workplace, right? Like, we're not supposed to be brash and confident and competitive. Like, we're supposed to be demure, and we're supposed to wait our turn, and we're not supposed to yell at people. We have always been held to a different standard than a man. And I've seen that in coaching, from what the men's coach is allowed to do versus what I was allowed to do when I was coaching in college. And you see that in companies all the time, that women have to change who they are. And I think that's another challenge for us that we need to figure out that as we move forward, is how do we allow women to have the same qualities as a man in the workplace and not have it be perceived differently. Like, take our competitiveness and our drive and our ambition and have that be a positive characteristic to the way that we lead. And I think that's by encouraging other women to showcase that, teaching other women how to harness that, right? And how to use it to the best of their ability while always being mindful of playing that game, with other people in the room.
Well, I think that's what helps with, when we have women like ourselves in leadership positions, right? You can create that environment where it's maybe not negating it totally, but finding ways to kind of like to your point of helping others understand how to use it or how to manage it or how to manage the expectations around it. But I think the more women that are in leadership positions, to me, it helps negate some of that stereotype or what the expectations are, because that becomes a little bit more of the normal. I think sometimes it's a little bit harder for maybe that next generation coming up because, to the point, there's not as many opportunities there, right? Or women aren't helping women because they feel like, well, this is my one chance, so I can't be beat out by somebody else. And so I think creating more opportunity where it's not that, to your point, the only one or the only few, but that it becomes a little more widespread and that you can help train up the next group of leaders. I think that's going to go a long way with over time, right? It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think that's a way to help negate some of those things.
And it's a superpower, really. If you really can figure out how to harness it and utilize it to grow a business, it's actually it's been my superpower. But I think that the one, to your point, where women are kind of judged on their leadership styles, the one thing women do, and the one thing I do and athletes do, is they hold people accountable. And I think when you start holding people accountable, that is when we become, oh, it's a woman. It's like, no, I mean, maybe it's a natural thing that we do, but especially when you're an athlete, you're not an athlete if you can't hold yourself accountable. You can't, and you're not going to, persevere in athletics that way. So I think that how I've done it with my business is I am who I am. I have bred a healthy competitive environment within my office. Everybody is happy, and they know they're being led by someone solid. And I know that as female leaders, all of three of us, we have a very similar story there. But what about the women that are like, well, what if I don't do it right? And I think that's why it's so important that the three of us kind of do things like this, right? And talk about our pieces and our stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, the accountability goes back to us wanting our women to be the best version of themselves, right? We wouldn't be holding you accountable if we didn't expect or know that there was a level of performance that we can aspire everybody to have. So yeah, the conversation is important. The expectation that you're gonna fail, and it's okay, and you're gonna be held accountable for it, and then we're gonna learn from it, and we're gonna be better the next time. And how many leaders are actually saying that and conveying that? My accountability expectation is because I want the best out of you, and I'm gonna drive you to that level as often as I can.
I think it just hammers home the point of the importance of the access to young girls getting in sports, right? You talk about being on the pitch, right? When it's on you to make that decision, but if you fail and people, you lost, right? Your coaches hold you accountable, and I feel like that helps you learn how to do that in a more normal way. So then when you become a leader, it's not a new concept, right? It's not where you're under pressure and you've never felt that before because you did it as a kid growing up. So I think the more that we can keep girls in sports will help kind of breed that next group of leaders that can understand and handle some of those situations.
Well, I feel like the NCAA always talks during the NCAA tournament about how less than 1% of NCAA athletes are going to move on to be professional athletes. So there is a huge population of athletes that need to do something other than play sports. I don't think that there was always enough opportunity for women to be in coaching or managing positions. It's just like the pay gap. It's something that we've had to fight for. It's something we've had to almost justify. Like, why are you better at this than a man would be? And that's why it's really important that we push every year and constantly to add positions, to groom the next generation, to give former players opportunities to learn the business and see the fruits of our labor, right? Like, yes, we want to get paid, and yes, we want to be valued, but there's a feeling of, like accomplishment and this reward to be involved in female athletics and to be a part of that fight. And working with female athletes is the ultimate reward, right? We're promoting their platform, we're amplifying their voices, we're showcasing them on the biggest stage to be the best versions of themselves as athletes and as women, and as mentors. And I don't know that our male counterparts can say that there's as much joy, right, and sense of satisfaction in doing that kind of work and being together, being a part of that fight. So there's a lot more opportunities than there used to be, whether it's officiating or managing, general manager or team president or a coach, or there's so many like stories of people who weren't great athletes that became great coaches because they have a mind for accountability and leadership and understanding the game in a way that's beneficial. And I played for a long time, but I never as a player felt the reward that I did as a coach, like to impact the lives of the women I was coaching. I never felt that as a player as much as I did as a basketball coach.
Is the 1% by choice or
No,
by
there's just
opportunity?
I think it's just more opportunity. You're thinking about there's thousands and thousands of NCAA athletes at Division 1, 2, and 3, right? In women's basketball, there's 144 spots, maybe 8 to 10 players make the league this year, right? In men's basketball, even though there's 30 teams, there's probably less than 30 men that make the NBA every year. You know, you're talking about golf. It's like you have to qualify to be a professional athlete. And nobody's like graduating, right? People have to retire to create opportunities. So there's so few chances to be a professional athlete at a 22-year-old. And I was explaining this to my son the other day. They tell you that your athletic peak is until you're 27. So think about how many people stop playing sports before they get to a point in their career where they could be at their very best because they put in the amount of hours, they put in the amount of years, and they have the experience to be their best. And these college athletes don't even get past 22. So you're competing against people that are at the peak of their career and fighting for a spot, and you have to be exceptional to do that. So we don't want to discourage it. We just want to make these athletes aware that there's other avenues that you can pursue to stay involved in sports, whether you're the person behind the camera, right? Like you're somebody that's creating this content series. Like you might not be the face of the organization, but you might be the storyteller. You might be the person that's creating the media and the publicity around these women to get us to a point where we can close that equity and that pay gap.
And I don't know if anybody's ever said it the way you just said it, and I think that's the issue. Like there's not enough talking and saying, listen, because I'll tell you, if you asked me in high school, I was going to be an Olympian and a pro athlete. I didn't care. I wanted to go to the Olympics for softball. Then I think I was starting college or I was in college, they pulled softball from the Olympics. I go, well, there goes that dream, you know. But I obviously always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, so I'm like, well, I came to the conclusion that I'm not going to be a pro athlete, though I still haven't given up hope. Maybe the senior LPGA, maybe. All right. But, you know, and I'm not going to be an Olympian. But I didn't consider what you're saying. Not once in my mind did I ever consider, I love the sport so much that maybe I can just dedicate myself, entrench myself in the sport, and maybe become a coach, maybe become a bigger part of the whole. Yeah. I don't think as athletes we're trained to think that way. Yeah. And I think maybe that is something when we're working with our youth to try to get through to them, because I will tell you personal experience, I didn't. It was either go big or go home. But there's so many other stops that can get you big, because as you've said, you've never gotten more joy than coaching, than even playing. Yeah. I couldn't fathom that as I was young, but being older and kind of being a part of a big organization and you know, being the face of my organization, I would agree, right? I can see it. Yeah. So I think really talking to our youth, but also just portraying to women, men, whoever it is, listen, there's this many spots, it's about that many, but you can be part of it and then end up coaching or managing a team. It's great. Dawn Staley is like one of my favorite coaches to watch. I mean, but look at her track to get there too. You know, I think we just need to raise awareness around it.
Yeah, and then we talked about the youth, and I think that's why we've taken a approach similar with our youth development and kind of our community is there's so many kids that want to be a pro, right? That have the dream that we've all had. But I think where we don't even just use our players, but also a lot of our staff, right? To show like, you don't have to be the best athlete or make it to a pro to be in a position, but here's a lot of people that you can look at right in front of you. You can reach out and touch them that are doing things in sport to keep you connected. And I think it's the same for our players, where I think as a former player, sometimes your bubble in your mind is so small in what you're doing, but to be exposed to understand these are the opportunities, giving a little bit of insight into what it is, because we don't know as a player what the work looks like on the other side. So I think the more that they're exposed to it in certain ways and understand this is a feasible option for you, you can get there, we can help you get there. I think that's what makes it accessible and will hopefully keep more athletes, whether it's pros, amateurs, but to find a way that they can stay involved in sports.
It's an operation. Right? How many employees does the Sun have doing it? Like ish.
Yeah, I mean, we have over 50 when you include both
No,
sides.
kids' mouths would drop to the floor. They just think it's the players and the coaches. They don't realize that there's this whole backlog, which they may be like, I want to be part of the sport, but wow, that seems like something that's totally up my alley. I want to do. So again, awareness, kind of like the mapping of what there is available, I think could really change things for a lot of kids. Because a lot of kids go into sports to escape their lives. You got to remember that this is my way out, right? I did. This is my way out, my way out. They can still have a way out and be a big part of an organization.
Yeah, I think as you get older, your definition of what success looks like changes, right? So Morgan doesn't really understand that yet because she's still so young. But you know, when you're an athlete and it's about how many points you score and earning the scholarship and winning a national championship or being an Olympian, and it's so singular focused. And then, you know, you become, you know, you enter into the workforce and you become a leader, and all of a sudden, like, it becomes about impact. And it becomes about your legacy, right? And you don't want your legacy to just be how many points you scored, right? Or how many home runs you hit. You want your legacy to be about how many people you impacted, right? And for us, I think it's how many young women did we impact, and how many young women did we help pave the way, you know, in their careers to see a level of success that maybe they never thought that they could accomplish. Or maybe when they were 15, they were too narrow-minded to think that they could find a level of success in a different path. And so I think that's where it becomes really special to be a coach or a leader or a team president or a lawyer, where all of a sudden you have so many more people that you can impact in life. And that's where the reward truly is. And that's where we need to continue to encourage these young girls to stay involved in sport in whatever capacity, because the impact that they can have throughout their lives will be so much greater if they stick the course.
You know Tyrese Maxey? Do you know who he is? Okay. So we did a charitable thing with him for Thanksgiving this year. Super nice guy, and his whole family is great. But their charity really spoke to me in a way, because I feel like as athletes, we want to go win it all or not win it all, right? Like that's the thing. So I think we always look at everything as 100%, 100%. And Tyrese's big thing with the charity is, when I'm gone one day, I want to have made 1% difference. And I think if we can just focus on those 1% differences, right? Just 1% making small differences, I think it could be, and all of us do it, it could be so impactful. And it could be manageable. So, yeah. I think you guys are in an exciting time. Women's sports are awesome. Basketball is awesome. And I'm excited to be part of it. So
We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.